Right, ladies and gentlemen, would you like to listen to the memorial lecture? Are you sure you don't want another message? Are you ready for the memorial lecture? All right, we're going to do it tomorrow, so... Ladies and gentlemen, it's my great pleasure to call once again the CEO of the Dr. Kenneth Kaunda Children of Africa Foundation, Mr. Sunday Musonda, to introduce our guest of honor.
Sister Yvonne, Comrade Luce, it is our time now to introduce our speaker. Before we introduce our speaker, we want to attempt to answer the question. He was human, but some of us who worked with him, like myself, 27 years, I worked with Dr. Kaunda. I refer to him as a saint of our time. Dr. Goodluck Ebele Azikiwe Jonathan was the 14th president of Nigeria. He was in office from May 2010 to May 2015. Before that, from May 2007 to May 2010, Dr. Goodluck Jonathan was Vice President of Nigeria. And before the Vice Presidency, from May 2005 to May 2007, he was Governor of the state of Bayelsa. He had been Deputy Governor of Bayelsa from 1999 to 2005. So over the decades, Dr. Goodluck Jonathan has been very involved in working for change and progress by using public roles and institutions. Dr. Jonathan has been prepared by the experiences so that he can serve others through public governance. Also, his particular experiences enables Dr. Goodluck Jonathan to be suited to be here in Pretoria to be the speaker at the Kenneth Kaunda International Memorial Lecture. Dr. Goodluck Jonathan combines skills and experiences in many fields and roles. He has trained in natural sciences and has a doctorate from there. He has specialization in biology and zoology, that is the science of animal life. He was a lecturer. He has been involved in environmental safety. He has been in education management. Thus, he has contributed a lot to learning and capacity building in society. Like other persons in Africa and the world, Dr. Jonathan, born in November 1957, had over the decades heard a lot about Dr. Kenneth Kaunda, the first president of the Republic of Zambia. KK was making major contributions to the world in the early years of independent Nigeria from the 1960s. KK's book, Zambia Shall Be Free, was required reading for learners in Nigeria institutions. In addition, many people in Nigeria, which was regarded as the honorary member of the frontline states, clearly followed the developments taking place in struggle for independence and against apartheid in South Africa. In these struggles, working with others, Kenneth Kaunda was a key player and leader. Thus, young persons then, like Goodluck Jonathan, had followed the life and works of Kenneth Kaunda. The young ones were the sons and daughters of the independence leaders. The sons and daughters, KK and his colleagues, would expect to help move forward the African mission. Over the years before Dr. Goodluck became president, the two interacted. When Dr. Jonathan was president of Nigeria, they interacted. When Dr. Jonathan left the president, the two continued interacting. They met in Nigeria, and when Dr. Jonathan visited Zambia, when he was out of office, he made sure that he met KK in Lusaka. Thus, it is fitting that Dr. Goodluck Jonathan, the 14th President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, delivers the Kenneth Kaunda International Memorial Lecture here in Pretoria. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I now present to you today's speaker at the Kenneth Kaunda Memorial Lecture, His Excellency, Dr. Goodluck Jonathan.
Please be seated. Let me especially appreciate my good friend, the former Vice President of Zambia, Dr. Nevers Mumba. Thank you for coming. And in fact, you actually gave the keynote speech. Let me also appreciate who brought us here, Comrade Sunday Usonda. Thank you for your good words. His Excellency Ambassador Andre, the Dean of the African Diplomatic Corps, thank you for managing a diplomat very well and for your beautiful speech. The Excellencies, Ambassadors, High Commissioners, and other members of the Diplomatic Corps are here with us. Let me also appreciate our own beloved Princess of Africa, MS Yvonne Chaka Chaka. Thank you for what you have been doing for Africa. And also let me appreciate our own, the son of Kenneth Kaunda, Kaweshe Kaunda, for representing the family in this program. Let me also appreciate the guest speaker who spoke on Kenneth Kaunda's contributions to Africa, Professor Ajeles. Thank you for your beautiful speech. In fact, let me appreciate all of us. Let me not enumerate too many names, but appreciate all of us for coming here for this lecture. In fact, after listening to all the contributions, and especially listening to Professor Janet and the former Vice President, you will agree with me that I have nothing to say again. In fact, I would have just said, maybe I concur. But my good friend, Vice President Busamba, said he wants to listen to me, but I'll disappoint you. And because he said so I crave the indulgence, so allow me to suffer your ears by repeating what every other person has said. I thank the President of South Africa, His Excellency Cyril Ramaphosa, and the great people of South Africa for welcoming us affectionately. I understand President Ramaphosa is currently out of the country, but I am pleased that before he left, he made arrangements, and in fact, he sent a beautiful letter to the organizers of this program, and they gave me the letter to read. So he actually wanted to be here, and in that letter, I mentioned I was going to send a representative. Unfortunately, we are yet to see the representative, but he's a part of us. Let me sincerely appreciate the Kenneth Kaunda Children of Africa Foundation for inviting me to be part of this year's Kenneth Kaunda Memorial Public Lecture, and for the opportunity to share my thoughts on the life and lessons of Africa's foremost statesman and icon. I do also thank MS Yvonne Chaka Chaka, the Princess of Africa Foundation, the Center for Policy Dialogue of Zambia, former President Thabo Mbeki and the Thabo Mbeki Foundation, who have partnered with Kenneth Kaunda Children's of Africa Foundation to ensure the success of this year's lecture. I'm particularly happy that I'm in UNISA today to participate in this program. This is a prestigious university that most people will want to have one or two things to do with. Kenneth Kaunda invoked memories of freedom, hope, justice, and sacrifice. In short, there is no limit to the essence of the character that our father, Kaunda, exemplifies, and of course, we have listened to everything about him. He was a specimen of the highest level of patriotism. He was also a strong promoter of Pan-Africanism, an idea that has now attained maturity with the realization of the African Continental Free Trade Area, which itself was the product of the vision of men and women like Dr. Kaunda. Dr. Kaunda's life was the pattern of good works, and it was presidential humanitarian work of providing relief for HIV/AIDS patients and promoting practice and measures to curb the spread of the virus will ever be remembered. Please, permit me to repeat what I said in a tribute I published when he died 2 years ago. Then, I put up the following about Kaunda, and I quote, "Not only was he of very great significance to Africa's struggle for liberation, he was also quite significant to me in person. I met him as a much younger politician, and I am glad to have maintained a close relationship with him. During my time as the governor of Bayelsa State, which was mentioned by somebody, Bayelsa State in 2006, I invited Dr. Kaunda to Bayelsa State, the capital, to Yenagoa, the capital of Bayelsa State, and he spent 2 days with us in Yenagoa. And of course, why we invited him, that was about 6 months into my being a governor. And of course, the figures of the incident of HIV in Bayelsa State was quite high among the statistics of Nigeria. And I felt that I would take it to the list. And we wanted to do a major program in terms of sensitization to make sure that the people living with HIV work with government. Then some people are even afraid to go and collect the drugs, even if they are given free. They were so stigmatized. I remember there's a case where a lady even drove the daughter out of the house. And I felt we must block this and wanted to do a major awareness. So we now say 3 arms work, that is both the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary will be involved. Back home, then once Senator Ken Nnamani was the Senate president, and he also came for that program. And we also brought well-known people in the sports, young people who love sports, people like Kano, who was one of the well-known footballers, and other celebrities to Yenagoa. And we are looking for an African voice that will help us push that agenda. And it was Dr. Kaunda that from all our investigation, he was the #1 voice in terms of HIV issues in Africa. He did very well. So we invited him to Yenagoa. He spent 2 days with us. And his speeches and his practical involvement in the program actually encouraged so many young people. In fact, almost everybody. Because within that period, we were dancing with people who were positive. We were hugging them in the public. I think the personality like Kenneth Kaunda, and of course the governor of the state then, myself, will be embracing the people, both men and women, who said to be positive. That feeling of stigmatization dropped significantly. And just like the lady I told you about that drove the daughter away from the house, because instead giving them the drugs, and we're giving them some money to supplement for their feeding. At 10 naira value, there it was 10,000 naira. Now 10,000 naira, so almost nothing, but then that's a lot of value. That lady that was driven out by the mother has to get her own house, step by government. The mother has some institutional accommodation, now passes the other children to go and live. Again, so that tells you what we did with Dr. Kaunda that changed the thinking about the people living with HIV in Bayelsa State then. And of course, I was marveled. He was at 82 years then. But whenever we were moving, he was ahead of me. And he was a very active person. Even when I became president, he visited me a couple of times. And just like I mentioned also, when I left office, when I led the African Union Election Observation Mission in Zambia, I stayed in Special Kwasekwa, because there's no way I would be in Zambia without visiting Kenneth Kaunda. And again, 2 years ago, this 2 years ago, the Capital University in Uganda wrote to me to appoint me as the chancellor of that university. And initially, I was a bit reluctant. I just left as the president, and as the president, I was appointed chancellor, so all the federal universities we have in Nigeria were quite a number. Then, me to go and be the chancellor of a university, I said, no, what? When I read through the letter, and in that letter, it stated that the first chancellor was the former president of Tanzania, the former president of Tanzania, Benjamin Mkapa, and the immediate vice chancellor was my good person I call my uncle, Dr. Kaunda. I said, if Kaunda had just stepping out and you're asking Jonathan to step in, then I think I was stepping. And that's what made me to accept to hold that office. Kaunda, in my view, will continue to serve as the propelling force for Africa's struggle for independence and economic emancipation. And I am glad that I maintained a personal relationship with him for a long time and benefited extremely from him. Because when he came to Bayelsa during that program, the program was for HIV/AIDS. But during our quiet times, I gave him the vision of my state, because Bayelsa was one of the last states created in Nigeria. It was created in 1996 from the rural part of the country. That's where I come from. And as at that time, Bayelsa State was just about 7 years old, faced with all kinds of challenges, but I had a vision for the state. So when I gave him my vision, the first president of Zambia, he also now taught me. Sometimes I would spend almost like 2 hours. He was giving me a lecture. And I was to go about it to get to where I think I would take that state to. Unfortunately, I didn't stay long as the governor of the state. Dr. Kaunda's voice on earth was an odyssey marked by many exciting milestones. The most significant being his role in nation building and his passion for a just and peaceful society. He was a foremost Pan-Africanist, everybody has said so, who worked tirelessly with his contemporaries like Kwame Nkrumah, Nnamdi Azikiwe, Jomo Kenyatta, Julius Nyerere, Patrice Lumumba, and Sekou Touré to build freedom for many of our countries. They worked together to promote African unity and solidarity and to advocate for self-determination and economic development. Kaunda's timeline was defined by courage, strength, and resilience, championing hope and freedom and good governance in his home country, Zambia, the other South African countries, and the entire African continent. His dedication to the cause of justice and African emancipation paid off as we saw the decolonization and the freedom of his neighbors and brothers in Malawi, Zimbabwe, and South Africa. Like my country, Nigeria, which acquired the status of a honorary frontline state because of its commitment towards ending the regime of apartheid in South Africa, Kaunda made considerable contributions to the anti-apartheid struggle. The former Vice President said it all, but let me just repeat what he said. In this regard, this was how Shannon Abraham, you must know her because she was a very good journalist from South Africa, a South African writer, captured the Kaunda personnel in a tribute published in the Independence Online in 2021. And let me quote her profusely. These are not my words. And I quote, Kenneth Kaunda was larger than life. He will forever remain one of the continent's towering heroes who served his people as a humble giant and gave tangible support to liberation movement across Southern Africa. He proved so committed to the liberation struggle of South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Namibia that he allowed them to establish their headquarters in Zambia, which put his own people at risk given the violent retaliation and destabilization campaign of the apartheid regime. And of course, the Vice President said so, our bridges were bombed. ZAPU, she continued, ZAPU and ZANU of Zimbabwe and ANC of South Africa, which based their struggle headquarters in Lusaka, homage to the solidarity of Kaunda with their common cause to rid the region of colonial domination and oppression. Kaunda had close personal relationship with South Africa's liberation leaders such as Oliver Tambo, Walter Sisulu, and Chris Hani. Nothing was too much for his comrades, and Kaunda even insisted on providing Tambo accommodation at his presidential residence known as State House. He continued, Kaunda was such a vociferous anti-colonialist that from 1954 he refused to drink tea and coffee in protest against British colonialism, a personal protest he kept up for the rest of his life. And that is what she wrote. And for those of you who know her, she is a lady and a South African from Indian background, and her husband was a strong member of ANC. He was not from Zambia. So she wrote what she believed that Kenneth Kaunda stood for. To underscore the impact and contributions of Kenneth Kaunda to his people, the office of the first president was created in Zambia, a position unique and specific to him. I have not, in fact, it's only in Zambia that I hear about office of the first president. I've not heard of that in any of the African countries. That means that for the people to, yes, they respect, a number of countries respect their former president. Those former presidents were also sent to exile by their successors. But for the people of Zambia to create that office and they maintain that office until Kaunda dies, that shows that no matter what anybody could, for reasons of politics, say, Ken Kaunda did very well for the people. Today, as we gather here, we must reflect on the defining virtues that made leaders like Kaunda stand out and how they made significant contributions to our continent's development. As a young man then, my knowledge of African history was shaped by transformational leaders like Kwame Nkrumah, Nnamdi Azikiwe, Julius Nyerere, and of course, Kenneth Kaunda. The stories of their resilience and passion for nation building form the basis of contemporary African history. Their strides and sacrificial lifestyles towards their continent have produced many benefits for the continent. In their prime, these leaders envisioned a continent of hope where its people would be free from every guise of bondage. They committed their lives to actualizing their dreams of independence for their countries. The fire of freedom burning in them emboldened them to cross many rivers and scale great heights to ensure they serve their societies, sometimes at the risk of their personal safety and freedom and comfort. The likes of Kaunda could have opted to take sides with the oppressors and feed fat on their spoils at the expense of the freedom of their people who were in bondage, but they choose the altruistic path of pursuing justice, hope, freedom, and good governance for their people. Having looked through the Kaunda escapade, sometimes we can ask ourselves, what is the current political leadership in Africa? I don't want to give a talk on it, but let us just have a bird's eye view. Having examined the leadership style of one of our leading founding fathers, Dr. Kaunda, we as Africans need to reflect on our pre-independence struggles, early independence leadership, the current political leadership in Africa, and the future of Africa. By 1964, most African countries had gained independence from our colonial masters. But as African story really changed, a British journalist and historian, Martin Meredith, in his book titled The State of Africa, A History of 50 Years of Independence, published in 2005, accused some members of the first and second generation African leaders of vicious nepotism, dictatorship, and stifling oppression, often to the detriment of improving the green lot of the common man. I think a similar book written in the 70s by one Arioye Ayebola titled Black Man Dilemma. For those who read that book, will have similar views. Can we honestly say that we have significantly taken a different trajectory from the kind of back picture painted above by Martin Meredith? Yes,